We have a lot of wide receivers to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. Tier 1 will be Tyreek Hill in a tier by himself, averaging 26.5 fantasy points per game. I mean, the next best wide receiver is A.J. Brown at 3, but A.J. Brown only at 23. I'm actually going to put Jamar Chase ahead of A.J. Brown in our rest of season rankings, however. If you're looking at Jamar Chase, he's already through his bye week. Jamar Chase is at about 21 points per game, and you have to keep in mind, you had Joe Burrow injured for the first 5-6 weeks this season. Based on what we had last week against the 49ers, looking at Burrow at damn near 100% strength and combining that with what Vegas is telling us for the Bengals this week, I'm going to be operating under the assumption that Joe Burrow is 100% good to go going forward. If that wasn't the case, I would assume that they would have the Buffalo Bills favored over Cincinnati, but instead you have the Bengals as 2.5-point favorites this week. So I'm operating under the assumption that Burrow is at 100% strength rest of season. Stephon Diggs at about 21.5 points per game as well. With Diggs, a little more consistency than maybe what you have with A.J. Brown, and I think that you may just look at him and say, okay, the ceiling hasn't necessarily been the same as what we've had with Brown. I don't know. Obviously, if you're looking here 3-4, you're nitpicking at this point. I mean, if you have both these guys, you should just be really happy. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we'll go Amon-Ra St. Brown at 5, averaging about 20 points per game. He's a young wide receiver. They trade for Donovan Peoples-Jones, but that really shouldn't have any impact whatsoever. I just think it means that, yeah, you're probably ready to just cut Jameson Williams. I thought that Jameson could have been a good real-life wide receiver by stretching NFL defenses, but we knew Jameson wasn't really going to be anything for fantasy purposes. But it looks like Jameson just may be nothing, period. Cooper Kupp will be our next guy at 6. Kupp is falling down these rankings, and I want to be fully transparent with you. There's a shot that Cooper Kupp continues to fall. Now, a lot of this hinges on what we have with Matthew Stafford. Early in the week, we had no idea what to expect with Stafford. I was coming out saying, oh, okay, well, ultimately at the end of the day, this is a quarterback that has one of two outcomes. A, it's either a tear, and in that instance, you most likely have no Stafford for about a month. Or B, it's just a sprain, and we're going to get Matthew Stafford back in this week. It was just a sprain. I thought we were getting Stafford back this week, and it looks like that may not even be the case. Looks like Stafford may be missing this week, and if he does play, he's probably going to be limited. But obviously, we'd expect that as the season goes on, Stafford is able to get healthier. Now, CeeDee Lamb will be our next wide receiver at 7. Whit Lamb should have never panicked. He was a young, proven talent and a good offense commanding volume. That's really all you need to know. At wide receiver, you're going to have a lot of volatility from a week-to-week perspective. But if you check those boxes, at the end of the day, you should be just fine. And there really is no reason to go out there and worry. Now, our next wide receiver will be Keenan Allen. I wish I drafted a lot of Keenan Allen. Sadly, I did not. But also, at the same time, I had no idea that Quentin Johnson would be a bum and that Mike Williams would get injured. And now that we know that, looks like Keenan Allen is just going to consistently get funneled with 10-plus targets per game and one of the better offenses in the NFL. He's already through his bye week as well, so I think you'll be very excited. And then last but not least, we will have Justin Jefferson. I was assuming that by the time we got to about this point, we would have Justin Jefferson up there as, say, wide receiver 5 in our rest of season rankings. Maybe up there at the same tier as Chase, A.J. Brown, and Diggs. Because there's a chance that Jefferson's back just in 2 weeks from now. Now, my hesitation with this is obviously going to be the Kirk Cousins injury. I understand a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, this Cousins injury really is not going to have an impact. No, this Cousins injury means everything. If you look at the implied team totals that you have right now for these teams, you actually have the Minnesota Vikings projecting out this week to be a bottom 5 offense in the NFL. Now, of course, they'll have Joshua Dobbs coming in soon. Maybe it makes it a little bit better. I don't want to say they're a bottom 5 NFL offense for the rest of the season. But they go from being at the very top of the NFL in passing attempts and passing yards to a team that we can at least now assume at the bare minimum they're below average. So yeah, just brutal spot here. And then Adam Thielen will be that next wide receiver at 10. With Adam Thielen, this is a wide receiver that's hard to ignore. He's averaging 20.2 points per game. I mean, if we're sitting here trying to project out, my natural assumption would be like, oh, okay, let's put Puka ahead of Adam Thielen. But no, Adam Thielen's actually been better than Puka this season. Keep in mind, Puka got to play in a lot of these games where you had no Cooper Kupp as well, which won't be the case going forward. And now you have Matthew Stafford fully healthy. So I think we actually need to go through and take Thielen and put him ahead of Puka. We're going to go Waddle here as well. I would love to move Waddle ahead of Adam Thielen, but I can't. I mean, Jaylen Waddle only had 14.5 points per game compared to Adam Thielen at 20. Now, I will say they'll be much closer going forward. Like, even if you just look at the underdog pick'ems this week, you actually have Jaylen Waddle at 66.5 receiving yards, whereas you have Adam Thielen, up there at about 69. So it is super close between these guys. But ultimately, I do think that we probably have to take the player that's been more productive so far this season. Now, going over to someone that I literally have no idea what to expect, we will be looking at Devonte Adams. And honestly, I'm going to move Devonte Adams ahead of Jaylen Waddle. I mean, if you are looking at Adams, the coaching staff changed, the general manager changed, the quarterback changed. I don't see how this is a negative thing for this Raiders offense. With how bad this Raiders team has been, I would assume that can only really get better from this point. Adams has been about 15 points per game. He's averaging about 10 targets per game as well. And if you look at the underdog pick'ems this week against the Giants, you actually have Devonte Adams at 74.5 total yards, which is actually higher than the projection for Adam Thielen. I wouldn't mind if you wanted to say, well, Mason, come on, we're going to take the fewer than 74.5 total yards. You want to do you can do it. I mean, there are some other underdog pick'ems we'll be talking about later in this video that I like a little more. And of course, if you wanted to check out any of those underdog pick'ems, you can find that link in the description in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% a positive match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And with promo code FLOCK, you're also going to get a Lamar Jackson special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard as well. So make sure you are taking advantage of that. But now going over to our next guy, we will be looking at Chris Olave. With Olave, a lot of the same sentiments that we had with CeeDee Lamb previously are going to remain true. This is a young, proven talent at the wide receiver position. It's not like we're just projecting that he's good. We've seen him be great at the NFL level. That consistently is seeing the target volume. He's averaging almost 10 targets per game. I understand he hasn't been great, right? He's only averaged 12.5 fantasy points per contest, but he dealt with the injury earlier in the year. Now he is fully healthy. I'm completely fine going in and buying on Chris Olave. Now, Brandon Aiyuk will be our next wide receiver at 15. If you are looking at Aiyuk, this is someone that I think we have to assume takes a small step backwards with the addition of Deebo Samuel into this offense. Like, if you add in a healthy Deebo, it will improve the overall offensive pie. It's going to get larger. But at the same time, you are going to have, say, a smaller piece of that said pie going in the direction of Brandon Aiyuk. So yeah, based off the addition of Deebo, I think we have to move Aiyuk down, even if he has averaged more points per game than Olave, than Waddle, than Adams in this range. But our next wide receiver will be Michael Pittman. I mean, I'm very biased here. Michael Pittman was my third most drafted wide receiver on Underdog this year, so we are printing money right now with Michael Pittman Jr. But at the same time, Josh Downs continues to expand his role. Downs looks great. He was our second most drafted receiver. But nonetheless, I think that you can just safely say he's averaging 15.5 points per game. We can go with him. Now, Garrett Wilson will be that next guy. Now, if you are looking at what we have with Garrett Wilson, obviously the issue is you are looking at a wide receiver dealing with some of the worst quarterback play in the entire NFL. Now, if you had Aaron Rodgers here, yes, we'd have Garrett Wilson up there probably next to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But sadly, Zach Wilson, while the Jets are winning games, just hasn't been any better, really. DJ Moore will be our next wide receiver. DJ Moore almost averaging 18 points per game. A lot of this obviously comes in key matchups against Denver and Washington. But still, nonetheless, obviously you are excited to see that he goes out there, dominates in those good matchups. You're kind of hoping you get Justin Fields back at this point. And sure, I think Justin Fields is a much better real-life quarterback than what you have in the backup here. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that the passing volume dramatically improves when Justin Fields has averaged 160 passing yards per game in his NFL career. Now, Devonta Smith will be our next wide receiver at 19. Smith was that must-start guy for us last week because it was that great matchup against Washington. And with Smith, I'll reiterate what we were saying with a couple of these other names, right? When you're looking at a young wide receiver that's proven that he is talented in the NFL, and he is consistently getting volume in a good offense, that's a player I'm buying low on. So yes, I know Smith has been arguably one of, if not the worst wide receivers in this range. I'm still going out there and buying low on him. Now, Mike Evans will be that next guy. Evans has actually dominated pretty much every player not named DJ Moore in this tier so far. With Evans, though, a lot of this has come off of overall touchdown efficiency, which for Mike Evans in particular, with what we've seen from him historically, maybe is a little bit easier to project out than another wide receiver. But typically, we know that these touchdowns are going to be a little more volatile from week to week perspective than the targets you should expect. Now, DK Metcalf will be that next guy. DK Metcalf averaging about 13 points per game. We'll talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba later on. Obviously, the issue is, you're looking at a wide receiver that hasn't been great so far. And if JSN continues to expand his role here, maybe we are concerned for later in the season. Hollywood Brown will be our next wide receiver. Hollywood averaging about the same amount of points per game than what you've had with DK Metcalf. Now, the thing with Hollywood is now we are getting Kyler Murray back in. So honestly, as we sit here, I think that we should probably move Hollywood Brown ahead of Metcalf, and that it's going to be a hard for Metcalf situation to get better than what it's been. And I'd make an argument that it's hard for Hollywood situation to get worse than what it's been. Now, T. Higgins will be our next wide receiver. With Higgins, I understand he has been horrendous this year. He's averaging 8.8 points per game. He's still not fully out there. At least he wasn't last week. But looks like this should be an elite level offense going forward. As we said, right now, Las Vegas sportsbooks are pricing in the Cincinnati Bengals with the second highest implied team total of any team in the NFL this week. So this is someone that I want to assume is going to bounce back. Now, Deebo Samuel will be our next wide receiver at 24. Still think that Deebo Samuel is a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy. Sucks that you're not going to have him because of the bye this week. Sucks that he's only averaged 12 points per game, which is one of the lower marks in this entire tier. But with that being said, Deebo Samuel is a wide receiver that you had to deal with multiple injury-riddled weeks. So you had a couple weeks of Deebo Samuel going out there and playing and having a whopping 0 receptions. Do I think that's predictive of what we should expect with Deebo Samuel going forward? Or do I think that's more so based off what we had with the injury? I would say it's more so from the injury. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we'll go Amari Cooper, 25. The issue with Amari and the Deshaun Watson situation is it'd be very nice if we had any clarity whatsoever what's happening with Deshaun Watson. But the clarity is non-existent. We literally no idea when Deshaun Watson will be playing, when he'll be 100%. Amari's down there averaging 12 points per game. This has just been a bad offense overall. I think Amari can be much better than this. And I do want to reiterate, as we get to around this range, ladies and gentlemen, I would say from about wide receiver 16 to about wide receiver 33, they're all about the same. I know it's crazy to say, but go pull up the community rankings on flogfantasy.com. You'll see how close these guys are with their overall value. So I know it may seem like, oh, Mason, you have Amari all the way down here at 25 and Michael Pittman all the way up at 16. Well, yeah, it sounds like a big gap if you're just looking at the space on the screen. In reality, I want to let you know all these guys are so damn close past the top 16. And then Nico Collins will be that next guy at 26. With Nico Collins, I say it every week, but I have no idea what to do with the dude. It seems like every week we get suckered in after a strong performance to say, oh, okay, yeah, this is a must-start player going forward. And then after a dud performance, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know if we can trust him. What's a little frustrating is with the dud performances, it's not like what you have with, say, the Chris Olave mold, where at least with the Olave mold, you're getting a sense of, oh, okay, well, he still had 10 targets. He still had 12 targets. No, Nico Collins will go out there and give you a dud and get you 4 targets, where it's very hard to feel comfortable about him. Now, Jordan Addison will be our next wide receiver at 27. Now, if Kirk Cousins was fully healthy, Jordan Addison would be significantly higher than this. And with that being said as well, for my rankings this week, Jordan Addison will be significantly higher than this. Now, we will get Jefferson back in the long term, and you'll be in one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL with the best or one of the best wide receivers playing alongside you and a very capable tight end. So Addison goes from a star emerging to now someone that's much tougher to be excited about. Now, Christian Kirk will be here at 28. I know. Let's go Kirk, Godwin, Flowers, Hopkins, Deontay, Ridley. 2 things. One, I know it seems crazy going down screaming, Mason, how is Zay Flowers down here at 30? I want to reiterate, from 16 to 33, all of these guys are about the same. And 2, I understand maybe you're going to be pissed at me for either the DeAndre Hopkins or the Deontay Johnson ranking. I am recording this at about 6 p.m. on Thursday. I'm recording this right before the Thursday game. Obviously, if DeAndre Hopkins blows up again and Will Levis looks like that freaking dude, which I'm hoping he does, but I don't know, we will move DeAndre Hopkins up these rankings. If Deontay Johnson has another week where he sees 14 targets, Deontay Johnson will be moving up these rankings. I will be live streaming every single day until the end of the season. I'll be live streaming after the Thursday night game, so I can give you updates with these two players. And then dropping down to our next tier, we will go Terry McLaurin, Jacoby Myers, George Pickens. I'm going to reiterate, all these guys are extremely close, ladies and gentlemen. Extremely, extremely close. Now, if I am going to be looking at Terry McLaurin, the main thing that I can say is if you're looking at the projection that you have for him this week on Underdog, I mean, they actually put Terry McLaurin up there at 62.5 total yards. I actually wouldn't mind going with the fewer than 62 total yards for Terry McLaurin. And then actually on the other end of the spectrum, going ahead and taking the more than 42.5 receiving yards for Christian Watson. I think that would be a little bit of a nice spread because I do think that these players are much closer than they're being priced in. Now, our next guy will be Jackson Smith-Njigba, and we'll just throw the other players in here in the same tier. Josh Downs, Rashee Rice. These are rookies that are continuing to expand their roles. These are guys that I am excited about overall. But as it stands right now, it is difficult to differentiate them between the veterans that we have seen the long track record of production from, someone like Chris Godwin, right? I mean, even in this same tier, going Gabe Davis, Tyler Lockett, Drake London, all of these players are players I'm excited about. I know it seems like I'm incredibly low with them in our rankings this week. I think that they're damn close. I think that it is up to you. And this goes to show the strength of the wide receiver position in comparison to running back. If you are selling your running back for a receiver, you need to be charging a premium because I can count 43 startable wide receivers here. Whereas when we make these rest of season rankings for the running back position, I'll probably have 10 names that I'm confident about and then nobody beyond that. But I do want to reiterate, I am looking at Underdog, and I'm going to be going with the fewer than 62.5 total yards for Terry McLaurin. I'm going to be pairing that with more than 42.5 total yards for Christian Watson, and then more than half a total yard for Lamar Jackson. That's going to be $10 to win $60, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to get that Lamar Jackson special pick'em, if you want to get a 100% deposit match and our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, you can find that link to Underdog in both the description and the comment section. Promo code FLOCK is going to give you all that, only promo code FLOCK. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football, and I'll see you out with the live stream later tonight.